Okay. Hi, welcome to our podcast, Melvin, where we talk about unusual, sometimes stupid, sometimes dark and mysterious things. We're kind of all over the map here.
We are.
And it's fun. It's great. If you're new here, something that we do, my name is Tori. This is Nicole.
Hello.
We each go back and forth on a topic where I don't know what she talks about. She rarely knows what I'm talking about. So
It's usually a surprise. I will say she knows a little bit about what I'm going to talk about because I had mentioned it as like a fun fact, and then she didn't believe me, and so I had to like pull it up on Wikipedia, and she was like, I'm sorry, what? Because one of the reasons, believe it or not, that we don't have a lot of like Egyptian artifacts and mummies is because for a long time people were grinding them up and eating them as a form of medicine.
This I remember, and I was like, no, that sounds so no.
So I'm going to give you a warning on this one. I'm not going to go like in depth with anything, but just in general, the idea of people eating mummies is gross. So if that grosses you out,
Isn't that...
you might not want to, might want to skip this one. I won't be offended. I'm just saying I'm not personally that affected by it because luckily my imagination doesn't go that in depth on like visualizing it, but it's definitely gross.
Isn't this technically cannibalism?
Yes, it is. Yeah, today we're talking about cannibalism.
Of dried human. It's jerky.
No!
I'll just leave. I'll just walk out.
Mummies are people jerky. Oh no! Tori, what have you done?
I don't know. I wish it didn't come from my mouth. I'm just gonna...
That's a quote. You said that. That's a quote now. It's like, is she turning from the camera in shame, or is she turning from the camera just to drink her water? Maybe both.
You'll never know.
We'll never know the motivations.
Oh
But basically, the reason why people start eating mummies is all because of mistranslations in medical texts by like Egyptians and stuff, because they were talking about how they embalmed people.
So, are you saying that they thought that the Egyptians used the cannibalism to cure things?
I believe so, yes. Because they were looking at a bunch of different texts, but essentially like two different people both mistranslated it in very similar ways, and then no one questioned whether this was accurate or not.
That?
I mean, to be fair, I feel like we could do like multiple episodes on weird ways that they would cure things. Like I guarantee you, I'm calling it right now, I am going to do an episode about the plague because I already have one story about the plague, and that's one of my weird like things that I hyperfixate on. Things like Chernobyl. The bubonic plague was one when I was like in 4th grade. I don't know why. Just specific historical events. Because the plague, there were so many dumb things that they did to try to cure themselves.
Yeah.
So many.
My favorite's the leeches.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
you're bleeding and you're sick. We must make you bleed more.
It's like the common sense is not there.
Yeah, but basically, long story short, eating mummies was not the medicinal thing that they were talking about whenever they were documenting this in the actual like texts. So the material that they're talking about is mumia. I think that's how it's pronounced. If I mispronounce anything, it's gonna happen because there's a lot of like random Greek and fancy names.
We're not Greek.
So yeah, I'm lucky that I can somewhat fluently speak English, except for I mispronounce things all the time because I have a speech impediment where I talk faster than my brain wants to comprehend things. So if you are offended by me mispronouncing things, then I'm afraid you're going to have to get over it because I'm trying really hard right now. And I mean that with all the love in my heart.
Yeah, we mispronounce. We both have different speech impediments, but still there.
Like, I'm just going to go ahead and mention it, like, just little story time, because I feel like story times are fun sometimes. When I was little and I was learning how to talk, my parents thought that I wasn't talking. I was just speaking gibberish. And then one day they were videoing me and they put it in the VCR player, because back in the day we had, like, tapes that recorded things instead of, like, the itty-bitty SD cards that we have now. But they put it in the VCR player, and the VCR started eating the tape, so it went super slow. I was speaking fully fluent sentences that were very clear, but I was speaking so fast that everyone thought I was speaking gibberish. And I still have a tendency to do that today when I get like really amped up about something.
You know, this is one of those things that if you had a sibling, I bet they would have understand every single word.
Oh, absolutely. I was an only child, so I did not have that benefit, unfortunately. No. But I guarantee you it probably would have gone that same way where it's like, at the church that we're at, we'll have like these two siblings and one of them's like 4, so we don't understand what he's saying all the time, which is the most adorable thing ever. But then his sister will just look at us and be like, he said this. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was like, how did you get that?
He has his sister's just his walking translator. It's adorable.
But anyhow, so the translation was Mumia?
Yeah.
Or something along those lines?
Yeah, the material is called Mumia. It's like a type of asphalt, so it's like rocks, essentially, that you can like mix with water, and it solidifies.
Okay, so they made their own like concrete?
Yeah, that's what they used to use as like the embalming agent for mummies. That's why a lot of times mummies, whenever you find them, like the ice mummies that you find, their skin will be like more of like a brown or like a yellowish color. Mm-hmm. But mummies, like Egyptian mummies, they tend to have like a black skin tone if you take off the bandage wrappings because they were using asphalt as their embalming agent. It probably was like really watered down because I doubt they like poured like thick concrete, you know, because I don't think that would work very well. But they were using asphalt.
Okay.
Yeah, but they used to use asphalt also for wounds and fractures because it solidified so it would seal their wounds.
Almost like a very weird liquid Band-Aid. Mm-hmm. Gross.
And apparently they used Mumia a slightly different way for like Egyptian mummification, but it was the same idea. The whole idea was the material that was this medicinal material was what they used to embalm mummies, not the actual mummy itself.
Wait, what? Okay, so...
Yeah, so the mumia, the mumia was a material that they used to embalm the mummy.
Embalm the mummy.
Yeah, but it wasn't the mummy itself. But the translation, people thought it was the... Yes.
Okay, got you. Mm-hmm. Got you.
That's where some of the mistranslation came from, is that people started in the translations, which I'll read later. They literally thought that it was like the mummy was the medicine.
But how could that doesn't make any sense though, because isn't like further in the translation in their text or whatever is how like what's the word, sacred these mummies and tombs were. Like, why would they put all that effort just to use them for medical purposes?
That is a good question. I think it comes down to just ignorance of, like, today we're a lot more respectful. We're still not the most respectful, but we're a lot more respectful of, like, cultures. And, okay, if there's a tomb that's, like, a sacred tomb, don't open it. You know, like, I think there was an article about, like, they found, like, this mummy of a lady that had, like, glass eyes and, like, a sacred orb in her mouth. And everyone's like, do not take the orb out of the lady's mouth.
Ooh, I need to read and see if there's a curse with that.
Right? But we tend to be a lot more like, okay, preserve things, respect it, you know. But I think in older days, they just kind of dug around. They're like, oh, well, I found this, so this is mine.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. I feel like we're a lot more respectful as, like, in general. We still have a lot of work to do, but that's okay.
Yeah,
I don't think humans are ever going to get to that level of, like, we're only human. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Sorry, I still have a stupid cough from allergies, so pardon me.
Oh. The weather's been like woo 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 woo, and it's driving us both insane. But starting in the 12th century and up until the 19th century, mummies and asphalt from the mummies would be prominent in European medicine and artwork. I couldn't find anything much about what they used it in artwork, other than I think they used it as a pigment because mummy brown was literally like made from mummies at one point. Yeah. I feel like every episode I talk, I'm just disturbing Tori with something. Because she always has, she's like, you hit your microphone.
I did.
It's okay.
Pull that back.
So another...
Not only did you, whatever else they're going to do with, they put it on their eyes. They put human remains.
Mm-hmm.
That's like taking your cremated family member and deciding to use that for your smoky eye.
Oh my gosh.
That's disturbing.
That is true. I'm not gonna make that joke. you saw it going through my head. I'm not gonna make that joke.
The action was there, and it's like, nope. Oh gosh, don't make me laugh.
I can make that joke. My mom's cremated. It's okay. It's okay, guys.
Okay.
But asphalt was also known as bitumen, but it was used in glue, mortar, and different waterproofing methods as well. So they would like put it on like the tops of houses and stuff like that. It was because it was basically a concrete. They used this type of like concrete for everything. And they started using bitumen for embalming in the 12th dynasty, which was estimated between 1991 and 1802 BC. So like way long time ago.
When technology was not as advanced.
Yeah, not at all, because it was before Christ.
Yeah.
So, let's see. Oh, yeah. It became part of the healing process of the Arabs based on two Arab historian accounts, which was, and I'm definitely about to butcher this name, probably both of them, Muhammad ibn Zachariah and Razi. Oh, no, Al-Razi. Okay, I'm going to redo that. Muhammad ibn Zachariah al-Razi and Ibn al-Baitar. So, sorry if I butchered those. I am definitely not Arabic. And then medieval Persian physicians started using bitumen as a salve for cuts, bruises, and different bone fractures, and even internal injuries like stomach ulcers and tuberculosis. I have no idea how that helps tuberculosis, being that tuberculosis is a lung disease. I'm like, did they just like force you to inhale like
I feel like that makes it
concrete, or
totally
did they make
worse if you're like, let's stop your cough by clogging up your lungs. How are your lungs working anymore? You filled them up with concrete and dead human.
There's so many things that like I think smoking was once used as like a medicine for asthma. Like I don't.
Oh yeah.
Like, that's so weird to me. Cause,
I remember hearing that. That was weird. I think
medicine's just weird.
They didn't truly understand what they had made. And someone's like, if you breathe this in, it's supposed to, like, help coat your throat or something. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not into medicine or the creation of it for good reasons. I feel like I would be greatly disturbed.
I like hearing about medicine whenever it creates weird stories, if that makes sense. Because then I'm like, oh, I need to look into this now. Which there's a lot of weird stories about like medicine and remedies, and then people just either ignoring doctors or doctors just being like, you're fine.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful.
So, Pedanius Dioscortes had medicinal texts that ranked bitumen from the Dead Sea as medicinally superior to bitumen from Apollonia, which was basically a substitute for the Egyptian mumia. So, bitumen and mumia were both being used. They're all different types of, like, asphalt, essentially. But they literally, in medicinal texts, were ranking them as to what was the best. So apparently the stuff from the Dead Sea is the best.
In Europe, they're taking basically all of these
things and using them as random medicines. It was during the Crusades that European soldiers learned about mumia and demand increased in Europe. And with demand increasing, the search for another source of bitumen turned to the Egyptian tombs, this is when they really started using the mummies. So the mistranslations that led to these confusions where they started using mummies included, quote, "This is the mumia of the sepulchres with aloes and myrrh mixed with the liquid of the human body," by Simon Geniensis. And then the other quote is, "The substance found in the land where bodies are buried with aloes, by which the liquid of the dead mixed with aloes is transformed, and it is similar to marine pitch," which is Gerard of Cnemona, Cnemona. I don't even know where to start with that pronunciation. But those are the two big translations that made people think that the mumia that they needed for like medicine was actual mummies and not the asphalt.
Even with that translation, it's saying it mixed something in with the bodily fluids of the dead. Like, it's saying we mixed these things and put it into our dead. It's not saying the person themselves is...
It's because of the quotes, liquid of the human body and then liquid of the dead. They took that as like the actual like body as opposed to the embalming fluid in their translations. Even
with the mistranslation, how do you decide that this is what was... Like, it doesn't make any sense. Nowhere in there is it saying that they use it for healing. It's just saying this is how we prep our dead.
Mm-hmm. Well, they took it as medicinal properties. I don't know how they did. They probably were really dumb. They probably, honestly. I mean, if you think that making yourself bleed more is going to cure you of disease, like, I feel like there's a level of like ignorance of, I'm just not going to think too much about it and I'm just going to completely trust experts, even though logically, like, when I think about it, if I cut my finger or something, I feel faint and bad. So why would I think that making myself bleed would make myself feel better? You know? But I feel like there's so many skeptics and stuff. This is also the time whenever, like, if you carried like holy talismans that was going to miraculously heal you, as opposed to like, you know.
Yeah, I can see how some people being very ignorant of it, like, oh, they've cut themselves. It's like, oh, if you cut yourself in a different spot, that you won't feel it anymore. Of course you don't feel it anymore because now you're focused on the new one.
Mm-hmm. It probably is a case of that kind of logic, honestly.
Oh.
So the reason why they got further confused is because whenever they opened these tombs, the blackened flesh from the mummy got confused with the black material that was in the organs, because the organs would become solid because that's where all the asphalt would collect.
Yeah.
So they still interpreted it, instead of taking it as, oh, these organs are like a dark, like hard, like color and all this. They're like, well, the skin is also black, so it must be the entire material, as opposed to like something was injected into it.
Think that these people were just a whole different type being from their own? Why?
You have to remember that slavery and all that, they fully believed that like Africans and stuff like that were a completely different like species, which I cannot comprehend, but also I'm not in that era. But they would think that like natives and like Africans, they weren't Americans yet, but Africans and stuff, they thought they were like completely different people. I don't think they didn't even see them as people, really, if you think about it.
Well, then I guess this makes sense if they thought of them as only being, and I still can't. I'm trying. Probably a very bad try. Okay, I can understand a little bit better, but still not like... They look like you. Even if an alien, like, a UFO came down and they looked like us but had like just like abnormal coloring skin, so it was like purple or green, I still would not think, oh, let's char them up and then eat them.
Right. It's whenever something has a level of sentience, then I'm like, nah.
I don't understand how you can.
Well,
it's very savage.
Yeah, that's how different cultures were, though. I mean, that's just like me and you can't comprehend having slaves. I would hope I can't even comprehend that like back in the day, but you would never know. But
having a human as a pet.
Yeah.
I can't. No.
Like, that's awful. But that's the kind of times that we're talking about.
Okay, this makes a little bit more sense. Mm-hmm. They didn't think of it as them being themselves and them having themselves. And putting dead.
The story gets a little worse, in my opinion, too, which is unfortunate.
I don't like that you said that.
I'm just being honest right now. It does not get better. It does get better because eventually, we came to our common sense and we don't do that anymore, but it still was a thing. I sure hope
we don't do that. Who knows? There may be some people out there that are still doing it, which is awful, but they're probably not in touch with technology.
If you're still eating mummies, I am judging you. If you are able to listen to this podcast and you are eating dead people, I am judging you. It should not be, because technically we're not supposed to judge, but I am. I'm just saying. Okay. That's weird.
It's very strange.
So the Egyptian tombs and these deserts couldn't meet Europe's demand for mumia, so people started coming up with ways to make fraudulent mummies, also known as mumia falsa. And physicians would argue about the right ways to make mummies, such as how the person should die, and
how the person should die,
and how their cadaver should be treated. Scholars only started expressing that this might be a problem and that they shouldn't use human mumia in the 16th century.
Are they killing people?
They would take prisoners that had been executed, and there were a couple of physicians that would they would steal I think I have a name here actually. Apparently I did not write it down, but there was a physician that literally had a paper that explained different, he would steal the bodies of killed executed prisoners, and he would essentially experiment with them by trying different methods to embalm them. Yeah, and then he would sell the mumia falsa. And this was people would debate on the best ways to create mumia falsa. It's horrible.
It's like trying to determine what's the best way to eat a steak. This is awful.
It is. But Pierre Bellon, who, or it might be Bellon, he's French. I don't know how to pronounce that last name. But he was a French naturalist, and he concluded that the Arab physicians had actually used asphalt, so the mummies were a mistranslation. So he was the first one to be like, hey guys, I'm reading your book, and what you're saying the translation is, and I'm looking at it, and I don't think it's actually mummies. I think it's the embalming fluid that they were talking about. And King Francis I, he always carried a mixture of mumia and rhubarb with him as an immediate remedy for any injuries. And apothecaries in France were found to be stealing dead bodies of executed criminals to create the mumia. So there were literal shops that they would go, I guess, to wherever I'm pretty sure they had mass graves back then, because they would just execute pretty regularly back then.
Is it really bad that now I'm thinking D&D?
Oh my gosh.
There's this shop in a black alley, dark alley.
Oh no. I'm going to create a shop in our D&D campaign that's just going to be super sketchy. And I'm not going to disclose what exactly it is, but you're going to know. You're going to be like, no, I'm not going there.
It's going to be like, no. Mm-mm. Especially with my characters. I was like,
her character's a paladin.
Like, she's for sure gonna be like, burn the place down.
But yeah, they legitimately,
like, awful.
Merchants, they would steal bodies to create Mumia.
I'm sorry, I make jokes to try to cover up my uncomfortableness.
I do too. That's why I have some dark sense of humor sometimes, but it's like, it's one of those things like when my mom passed away, like Tori was around all the time, I would make jokes and she's just like, okay, she's okay in a way. She's at least cracking some jokes. They're sad, but it's okay.
It's like at first I'm like, can I laugh at these? And then later on I'm like, I'm just gonna laugh.
Sorry.
Like, she's making it. It's fine.
So in Egypt, a merchant admitted to be collecting bodies and preparing Mumia. So not only was it known that people were doing that, they started having people that were like, yeah, I make this false mummy material for you to sell.
Dead humans, yeah.
They're
not using their body anymore.
Technically not.
So.
Ugh. So many morals are being broken in this story, though. But Dutch physician Stephen Blankart, he had a lexicon that it was made in 1754, and it listed 4 types of mumia: Arabian exudate, Egyptian bodies embalmed in asphalt, sun-dried bodies of the desert, and asphalt. So it still included like their first material, like the original mumia material as a type of mumia, but the other 3, the other 2, because it had the Arabian exudate, which I think is also an asphalt, but it included the Egyptian bodies and sun-dried bodies that they were debating on how to create mummies as mumia in a book still in 1754. So it was still, basically the mistranslation was still being carried out in books instead of just being like, hey, so this was wrong. They're like, well, now it's just a synonym. Like the asphalt and the mummies are the exact same thing because culturally we've made it that way, I guess.
I can't.
But luckily, mumia went out of normal use in the 18th century, so it started going out in the 1700s. So around when that book was written is around when they started like not using mumia as much. But it was still offered for sale up until 1924 in the price list of Merck & Co.
I'm sorry, you're saying it stopped being used in around like the 1700s, but it was still being sold until the 1900s?
Yeah, it was still listed. I don't think anyone bought it, but it was still like in the price list of like this company called Merck & Co. up until 1924. And I think that's the last time that it was ever documented that like anyone was even selling it.
Interesting.
Yeah. Honestly, it probably happened in museums or something at this point. Like, hey, this is like some of the medicinal questionable stuff that they used to use.
Yeah, that could make sense, I guess.
The mumia was also used as the pigment, as I explained earlier. They used it for paint and probably makeup and stuff like that at some point. But mummy brown now is made of a mixture of kaolin, quartz, geothite, and hematite. So we still have mummy brown available as a color, but it is not made out of mummies anymore.
Oh, thank goodness.
Because I was going to say,
with human remains.
I'm just saying, if I ever see like mummy brown on a paint or something again, I'm going to be like, I know the origins of this. You used to be actual mummies.
You used to be a person.
So that's where our story ends, but I did find some other weird old medicine things just as a fun fact, like to round this out, that other weird old medicine uses include electricity for toothaches, vinegar-soaked rags for heart palpitations, cigarettes for asthma, which we talked about earlier, and then radium for arthritis.
You betcha. Need that radium to cure your arthritis.
Oh, yeah. At one point, we will probably talk about the radium girls, because that is a tragedy. But yeah, fortunately, and fortunately, that's where...
I'm trying to think of myself. Ooh, sorry, I'm way too close. trying to think of myself being like dead and cremated and then used as a paint or an eyeshadow.
I feel like I would be a ghost that's just like staring down like,
it's like, what are you doing?
What do you think you're doing?
Here's the App Store.
What the flip was that?
Did it voice activate?
I don't know.
So something on the Apple computer just
That
triggered
scared
itself,
me.
apparently. Lucas is not back there, so I don't know what that was.
You said ghost. Way to go, Nicole.
I'm sorry.
You brought it in. I'm kidding.
Like, if there's a ghost in the studio, I feel like you brought it in, Tor. You keep finding a lot of places with ghosts.
Oh, I need to tell my ghost stories. Those are nice. They're not bad. They're not evil. No, but I'm just like, I'm trying to put myself in, like, clearly I wouldn't, like, care. But at the same time, because I'm not here, but, like, if I was able to, like, visit, right, like, after, like, you lingered, then, and I saw this happening, I think I would, one, no to the eyeshadow, because you're just going to wipe me off, and that's just gross. Like, I don't want to be worn on you. Ew. But the paint, I'm like, if it's a good artwork, I'd be like, oh, hey.
Right?
I made a pretty painting.
I mean, people put ashes in a lot of stuff now.
Like,
I put my mom's ashes are in, like, this little, like, glass heart thing.
oh, it's cute.
Yeah, it's from a company called Artful Ashes. And it's like a little heart, and there's little, like, white streaks. You can tell that's where her ashes were put in.
Nice.
But there are some people that they put their ashes, like, in a seed for, like, a tree.
Yeah, I heard that.
And your
Like,
ashes
that
turn
one's
into a tree.
I would love that.
And then some people, I think, you can put ashes in, like, a pressed record now. So, like, you can recreate your favorite record, and it's kind of like a memorial of, hey, here's all what my favorite songs were.
That's kind of cool.
I'm glad that
Kind of creepy also. But kind of cool.
I'm glad that the consumption is not a thing anymore. Granted, they were doing it to mummies and like criminals, so I think they just weren't like equating it to like
to actual human life.
Yeah, because back in those days, if you did something wrong, it was like
You're
completely
still a human
guilty.
being, man.
Yeah, they were harsh back then.
It's like it's still human. Everybody makes mistakes. Some mistakes in our mind seems worse than others, but it's a mistake. Mm-hmm. Some make it constantly and know exactly what they're doing, and those people are evil, and some right. But I mean,
so the next time you go to a museum, like a history museum, and you're wondering why you can't find mummies whenever mummification wasn't really that rare of like a burial process as like we like to think of it as. The reason why you can't find the mummies is because they used to be a product that people would break into tombs and then use for medicinal purposes.
This is why they say they're cursed. Okay, because I think if I was being consumed, I'd be very angry.
Oh, I would be pretty mad.
I'm like, why are you? What do you think you're doing?
Right? It's like, okay. It's kind of, I'm one of those people where I'm like, okay, whenever I die, do what you want with me. I would prefer to be cremated just because it's cheaper these days, but it's like, I will say I do draw a line. Please don't, like, eat my ashes.
Me.
Like, that's just weird.
I wonder, now I'm like thinking, is there, I don't know why I'm thinking like there's a cultural thing or not to eat your dead relatives. I don't know.
We can always research that and see if there's another topic. If you want us to
I
look
hope it was
that
just
up,
a horror movie. I hope that's what it was that I'm just thinking of and not an actual thing, but
if that's something you want us to look up, let us know in the comments for sure, because we'll do the research for you and be disturbed for you, and then we can tell you and then thus make you also disturbed.
I'm disturbed.
If you want to. I don't know. You let me know.
Well, there you go. Don't do that.
Don't eat
do
mummies.
That. Don't eat
mummies.
Don't eat the ashes of remaining people. Don't eat dead.
I feel like it's not controversial to say just don't eat people.
Don't eat people. Yeah. Let's just not do that, all right?
There's the line that's crossing it.
That's like jumping far over it, okay? Let's not end it there. Well, thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
I guess we're all scarred, right?
So welcome.
You're scarred. I'm scarred. We're all scarred. Mm-hmm. Well, if you have now a little bit of more information, a little bit more tidbit to tell your friends, some disturbing info. If you like this, please go ahead, like, subscribe if you want to. Whatever you want to do.
It's a free world.
Yeah.
We're not going to be offended.
We're very thankful for you listening.
We're not everyone's cup of tea. Some people are like, that was gross. I don't want to like it. And I understand.
Yeah, it's totally okay. But we hope that you'll listen in the next time.
Bye-bye.